What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Book Binge on the King Crusoe YouTube channel. This is episode 6, and for the first Monday of February, we're going to be doing my January reading wrap-up and my February TBR. This is a monthly thing, the first Monday of each month. I'm going to be doing this type of thing. You can watch the one that I did in January right up there. Some of the things that I'll talk about in this video you'll have seen in there, but you'll notice some differences as well. I don't have anything really to say other than that for an introduction of this video, so let's just kind of jump right into the things that I read in January. And the first item of which was The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. I read Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers in late 2021. I nearly said 2020. I'm getting my years mixed up still. It's February and I'm still messing this stuff up somehow. Regardless, this book was the first one that I read all the way through in January, and I gotta say I loved it a whole lot. I'm not going to say too much here, but I've got 3 reviews for all of the Lord of the Rings coming out this month. Each of the next 3 Mondays will be covering each volume, and then the second Monday of March, I'll be doing a full series wrap-up and tier list type of thing for that. So if you're interested in any of that, check those out when they come out. Like I said, I'm not going to say too much about my experience with this, but it blew me out of the water. So that'll just give you a little bit of a precursor to what the review for this video is going to be about. But yeah, this is the first book that I read in January. Now, I was originally planning to read The Lightning Thief, which was the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series in January, and I got all the way through it. It actually went a lot faster than I anticipated it would. Now, a lot of that was because when I read this for the first and subsequently the second time, I was still really young and reading a lot slower than even I do now, which is still slow. But this book went by a lot faster, and I noticed a lot more things in it, a lot more details in it that I never noticed before, particularly in the realm of foreshadowing and stuff like that, and found myself enjoying it quite a bit still. I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Rick Riordan, and my reread of this series so far has been very positive for me overall, and I suppose I can just go ahead and show off the next book that I read in January, which was The Sea of Monsters. This is the second book in the Percy Jackson series. I actually wasn't originally planning to read this book until sometime this month, but I enjoyed The Lightning Thief so much and had 3 or 4 days before I needed to start my next book that I ended up reading, and decided to just throw in The Sea of Monsters because it was quite short and I knew that I would be able to fit it into the schedule. Sea of Monsters is definitely a lot more rough around the edges than The Lightning Thief is, for a variety of reasons. At some point in time when I finish rereading this whole series, I'm going to do a full series review of it, and I'm not going to do one video on each of the 5 books, but I'm going to do one video for all of them combined. And in that video, I'll definitely outline some of the reasons why I think Book 2 is not nearly as good as Book 1, but still pretty decent, especially for, an author's first YA series and stuff like that. Let's move on to the book that I read after that. Like I said, I had a few days in between finishing The Lightning Thief and starting the next book, and that's when I fit in The Sea of Monsters. Well, the next book that I ended up reading in January was The Gunslinger by Stephen King, the first book in the Dark Tower series. I'm going to be reading one of these a month up until June or July. I can't remember which one specifically, except for throwing in Wind Through the Keyhole in May alongside Wolves of the Kala. But yeah, I read this book, and man, it surprised me. Like, I read this, I've watched plenty of Stephen King book rankings where people have talked about, The Dark Tower or all of his books or just all of his books that they've read so far and whatnot, and kind of ranking them in some sort of order of enjoyment. And a lot of them have The Gunslinger pretty low, and some of them, I even saw one that had The Gunslinger all the way at the very bottom of the list, underneath everything else he's written, and I just cannot see it. I cannot see it. I loved this book. It's very confusing. There's a lot of things that are going on in it. I have no clue what's happening, don't understand plenty of it, but I loved reading this book. And I think some of my favorite sections were where Stephen King waxes philosophical. For some reason, whenever he goes into philosophical sections, those are some of my favorite parts of his books. And this happened 2 or 3 times in this book, but especially at the very end. This book is only 5 chapters. They're kind of like 5 short stories combined into one book. That 5th chapter is so good, and there's a 2 or 3 page section in it that is just a whole philosophical section, and I loved it. And as always, there's several quotes in here that I had to write down and save because, man, they are so good. Stephen King is a master of just writing random quotes that are fantastic. I don't think his prose gets enough credit because although it's a little bit different than I think your traditional style of writing, it can be incredibly good. So, that's just a precursor to how I'm going to feel when I actually review this book, which may be in March. I don't know when I'll get around to it. But when I get around to reviewing this book, I'm going to have a lot of good things to say about it, despite being confused for plenty of it. So, that was the fourth book I read in January, and already at this point, I've read more books in January than I did for any of the months prior in 2021. I mean, I technically read 4 books in December of 2021, but that was also technically not true because I read half of one of those books at the end of November and finished it in December. So January, I got a lot more reading done than I was anticipating. Granted, Percy Jackson is a YA series that only takes me like a minute to read per page. It's a lot shorter and a lot easier to read, but either way, it's still a lot more than I typically get done in a month. And I still have more that I ended up reading in January. So the 5th book that I finished was The Andromeda Strain. This copy is a, holy cow, the ring light, is a combination of Andromeda Strain, Terminal Man, and Great Train Robbery. All I read was The Andromeda Strain. You can see my bookmark in there where I'm going to be starting The Terminal Man. Who knows whenever I get around to it, but it's there for when I continue reading Michael Crichton. I liked Andromeda Strain a lot, like plenty more than I was actually thinking I would, because I've read Jurassic Park and The Lost World. I remember loving those, but the Andromeda Strain being his first book that he had ever written under his own name, I had heard plenty of mixed things, like his character work wasn't that great, and it was rough around the edges. I gotta say, I did not feel that. The only thing that I did not like that much about the Andromeda Strain was just how abruptly it ends, because its ending is quite sudden, comparatively speaking. But all in all, I really loved the Andromeda Strain, so I can't wait to continue reading Michael Crichton. If this is one of his technically worse books because of being rough around the edges, I can't wait to see what else he's written, since I've already read Jurassic Park at some point in time, which many people consider to be his best. So we'll see where his other books go from there. That was the 5th book I read in January, and there's one more, 6 books in January. It was a lot for me, but the 6th book was The Titan's Curse. This is Percy Jackson number 3. Like I said, I had a few days in between finishing the Andromeda Strain and what I was going to be starting to read in February, and because I hadn't actually gotten what I was going to read in February, more on that in a minute, I read Titan's Curse. This one I wasn't planning to read until February, March as well. I also got through this. This one was also far better than Sea of Monsters, which I'll outline more in a review for this series at some point in time. But it's pretty much right up there with the Lightning Thief for different reasons. But yeah, this was the 6th and final book that I actually got done reading in January. And actually, I'm going to have to cut this in a little bit earlier in the video. I realized right before I started outlining the books that I was going to read in February, I'd forgotten to give my books of the month, or my book of the month for January, so let's just do that really quick. This may not be obvious because I didn't talk a whole lot about these books, but one of the books that I'm going to outline here is The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. This was just fantastic. I had a great time with it. Like I said, I'm not going to say much more because I have a review of this and Lord of the Rings as a whole coming out where I talk all about why I love specific elements of this book. Definitely one of my favorites, but another favorite for completely different reasons was The Gunslinger. I talked about this enough in this video, though, for you to understand why I probably loved it. It got philosophical in some places, just the writing is fantastic, a lot of the world building is cool. I just was very surprised by The Gunslinger. Even if I don't necessarily like it more than The Return of the King, I have to outline it here just because it surprised me so much. So with all of that being said, let's kind of move into what I plan to read for February. There are a couple things that you might have guessed that I plan to read in February, but there are going to be some surprises here. In fact, there are going to be a lot because I was not originally planning on reading pretty much any of these books. Like the books that I'm going to be reading in February, only one of them I knew that I was going to be reading in February. That's kind of weird. For somebody who likes to have his reading schedule very planned out, this is quite strange. So let's just kind of get into some of those things. Now, the first book I'm going to read in February, I've actually already started reading. I recording this video in the morning of February 1st, and I started reading this last night and read a little bit more this morning. It is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, one of the classics. I talk about this a little bit as well in the book haul video that will be coming out the second Friday of February. In Mike's Book Reviews Discord server, plenty of us in there have decided that we're going to be doing a monthly classics read-along type of thing, where each month we vote on a classic book that we plan to read or want to read and vote on the one that we are going to read for the next month. February was the one that a few people had already decided for February, and I decided to jump on board. Like I said, I had a few days in between finishing Andromeda's Strain and this, so I read The Titan's Curse, if I can hold that up the right way. But the main reasons why I didn't start this immediately after finishing Andromeda's Strain was because I actually hadn't gotten the book yet. I had ordered this late enough that this just came yesterday on the 31st of January, the day that I started reading it, so I was definitely anticipating it. Like I said, I outlined this a little bit in the book haul. I got a version that has both the 1818 original edition and the revised 1831 version. I'm reading the 1818 version for this read-along. But yeah, this is the first book I'm reading in February. It's going by a little bit faster than I was thinking. So the next book that I'm going to be reading in February is going to be, well, this might not be the next one that I read, but it might be. We'll see how things go. Is going to be The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King, the Dark Tower book number 2. Like I said in just a little bit ago when I talked about The Gunslinger, this series is one that I'm going to be reading one per month every month. This was the only book that is out of these confirmed books that I'm reading for February that I knew that I was going to be reading and that was not going to change. I gotta say, I love this cover a heck of a lot more than I liked the cover for The Gunslinger. It's a little bit longer than The Gunslinger is, but not by a whole lot. It's nothing too intimidating like the way that a couple of the books in the series are. But I gotta say, I can't wait to read this. I really hope that I get the same kind of enjoyment that I got out of The Gunslinger. I know going in ahead of time that each book is drastically different in terms of style and other stuff like that, so I'm not expecting the same type of experience out of this book as I got out of The Gunslinger, but I thoroughly expect to enjoy this to some extent. And then the next book that I'm going to read in February is actually one that I wasn't planning to read for a very long time. It just kind of fell on my lap because it just kind of worked, I guess. Or in that same Discord server for Mike's Book Reviews, one of the members who is in the Classics read-along that we're doing decided that he was going to start his own read-along for Dune starting on February 15th. I'm probably going to start reading this book as soon as I finish Frankenstein to be able to get through it, because it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be when I got it for Christmas, and this edition is just gorgeous. But I'm not going to show that off. You can see that in the 2021 book haul video, I believe I'll put up there if I remember to. Who knows? Regardless, the point being that this was one that just kind of fell on my lap. I had no set in stone plans to read this, but in February I think I probably am going to go ahead and read this. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I don't know how fast I'm going to decide to read any of it, but I am going to read it in February, probably in between Frankenstein and The Drawing of the Three. If it takes me a little bit longer, I might be reading these two at the same time. We'll see. This month's going to get crazy, as you'll see in just a second, because those are the 3 books that I am going to read in February. It may get a little bit tight in terms of some reading schedule stuff, but I'm really hoping to get through at least these 3 books. But I have one more book to talk about in this section, and that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. This monstrosity that's 1,500 pages or something, or 1,300 pages. So big, so long, but epic, apparently. In that Discord server, again, I'm going to mention this Discord server a lot. I'm probably just going to start saying in videos, the Discord. I'm not talking about my own Discord, I'm talking about Mike's Discord. I might just have to start linking his Discord in my descriptions, because that's where I am all the time. But in that Discord, this book had a read-along in December that went into January. I was interested in joining it at first, but never got around to it. I just didn't have time and wasn't going to be able to. So I got this book recently because everybody who read the book really enjoyed it, and I honestly felt left out. I was like, I want to read this book now because everybody loved it. So I'm not going to read this whole book in February. Even if this was the only book that I read, this would take me the whole month, if not longer. So I have no intentions to read this entire book, especially when I've got these 3 books already to read. But what I am going to do is I'm going to start War and Peace. I'm going to start War and Peace sometime in February. I don't know how much I'm going to read. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get through at any point in time. But over the course of February and March, and probably April as well, I do plan to read this book as kind of a secondary to everything else. Hopefully I'm not bogging myself down with too many classics at one time that this gets, overwhelming or anything like that. But I'm really trying to take it slow. Like, all I've read up to this point, like I got this book yesterday as well. I only read the foreword. That was all I read. But I am planning to start this month. Not sure when, but I will be starting it this month. So that's all for this video. That's my reading wrap up. That's the TBR. That's everything that I've got going on for this month in the reading sphere. If you want to know all of the video and writing plans and stuff like that, you can check out the February State of Affairs right up there. But what I can say right now is, like I said, for the next 3 weeks are my reviews for each volume of The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship next week, Two Towers the week after that, and then Return of the King that last week of February, each Monday. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you don't miss those. I'm actually quite excited to get those videos out, and also have one come out in March, the second Monday of March, that covers the entire series. So if you're interested in any of that, stick around. Like I said, like the video, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the fancy YouTube stuff. Check out seasonalproductions.com for all of my content, period, all in one place. Just bookmark that and you'll be good to go. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate any and all support that anybody gives me. If you check out the website or just like the video or whatever it may be. This is the end of this one. I'll be back again next week starting my Lord of the Rings reviews. So be sure to stick around for that. I'll be back again in the next video.